on the key elements necessary for an adjustment program.
And after last week's uproar, European and international lenders won't be dipping into the bank accounts of small savers. However, there will be more pain than first planned for customers with more than 100,000 euros in Cyprus's coffers, a lot more. Nicosia has also agreed to wind down the toxic assets of its second largest banks, which could well push Laiki over the edge. How much of a hit investors take is still up for discussion. But for Cyprus, it's clear it's the end of an economy based almost exclusively on offshore finance. Will there still be a run on the banks when they eventually reopen? Cyprus's economy may weigh only 0.2% of the Eurozone, but it's a watershed moment, either inciting the continent to pick up the pace on forming a true banking union or speeding up the dislocation of the single currency. At the heart of it all, it's paymaster Germany and its relations with Southern Europe under strain. Today in the France 24 debate, tough love for Cyprus. And with us to talk about it from London, Costas Lapavitsas, author of Crisis in the Eurozone, economics professor at SOAS, the School of Oriental and African Studies. Thank you for being with us. Here in the studio with us, Thomas Klau of the European Council on Foreign Relations, former banker Jean-Paul Betbeze, president of Betbeze Consulting, or Betbeze Conseil, I don't know whichever you prefer.
Both.
And Andrea D'AMBRA, member of Beppe Grillo's anti-establishment five-star movement in Italy. Thank you for being with us. The France 24 debate, where you can always join the conversation on Facebook and on Twitter, our hashtag F24debate. Cyprus's central bank said late on Monday that all of its financial institutions will reopen Tuesday, except the two largest, Bank of Cyprus and Laiki, the second largest, which looks set for the chop. It would be wound down, deposits split into good and bad bank, savings up to 100,000, as we said, guaranteed, with heavy losses expected on deposits over 100,000. The Eurogroup chair saying the raid on uninsured Laiki depositors is expected to raise 4.2 billion, that's billion euros. When those banks do open in the morning, authorities hope customers will keep a cool head.
It's definitely a new day because the banks will open and we are going to see there how the people is responding to the shock. I hope that all Cypriots will show understanding and cooperate for patriotism to keep their savings where they are.
Let's cross over to Nicosia and France 24 correspondent Nathalie Savaricas. Nathalie, will the people heed that call to be patriotic, or can we be braced now for a run on the banks?
Well, it's interesting to hear that statement, and it's also interesting to see sometimes a disconnect between politicians and the people they're supposed to govern. I've been here just for a week, and I can tell you that the Cypriots have lost their cool, they're angry, and they feel tricked. And now they're really faced with an abyss. They have lost all trust in the political establishment here. They will not heed that call. Nonetheless, it will be interesting to see how they react tomorrow. Many Cypriots I've been speaking to don't think that there will be a run on the banks because they very well know that the government has installed these controls on their cash. Nonetheless, what they fear is scenes of chaos as angry savers try to get their assets, their funds, their life savings out of the cash, and they will wonder with disbelief on how anyone can deny them of that right.
You were saying controls on the cash. Do we have details on just how deep those controls run?
No, we have yet to receive exact specifics on these controls, François.
Now, you're standing outside Parliament, but it's not going to be voting, it seems, to approve that Brussels plan.
Yes, interestingly so. Now, we've been hearing the reasons why this vote won't take place. Now, one of the reasons is because this bailout involves a restructuring of a bank, and this falls under the auspices, if you like, of the Central Bank of Cyprus, so they can just decide on what will happen. The other reason that we're hearing about this is, of course, that the bailout negotiation is within the hands of the finance ministry and minister, so he can also just decide on the direction this will take.
All right, Nathalie Savaricas, thanks for that update from Nicosia, where you'll, of course, continue to follow that story when and if those banks open on Tuesday, as had been originally planned. Let me begin with you, Costas Lapavitsas in London. You heard our correspondent there explain the reasons why the Parliament is not going to be voting. What do you think of those reasons?
These reasons are completely without foundation. Basically, the politicians who agreed to this deal in Brussels are very scared of the political repercussions, and they're devising whatever means they can to avoid a real debate and to have real democratic confirmation of what they're doing, because they know they're not going to get it. After all, Mr. Schäuble, the German minister, said that you don't need Parliament to vote on these things. The truth is, you do, especially when it comes to the 10 billion euros that the Cypriot state is due to receive. That will definitely need parliamentary approval. So this has still a long way to go in Cyprus.
Thomas Klau, would you have preferred if there'd been a vote in Parliament?
Well, we've seen what happened last week after, when the Cypriot Parliament rejected the first deal, which of course was a bad one. But let's not forget that the Cypriot government was an active partner in making that deal such a bad one in terms of hitting not only the rich, and a lot of them are foreign rich, and a lot of them are Russian rich, but hitting also ordinary savers with not less than 100,000 and need less than 50 or 20,000 in the bank. So there was an ultimatum from the European Central Bank on the table. There was a sense of urgency. I think that given what happened over the last 8 days, given the dangers for Cyprus, for the Eurozone, handling it the way it's been handled now was the best way to make a good job on the basis of a bad foundation. Now, of course, further down the road, yes, the Cypriot Parliament will have to be involved. Yes, there will have to be a debate within the Cypriot political class, and there will have to be a debate within Cyprus, because let's not forget, this is a democracy, and citizens elected politicians who collectively made very, very poor choices. So yes, of course, it's the responsibility of politicians, but it's too easy to blame just the politicos. It's important also for citizens to realize that if they vote stupidly or badly or carelessly, then the result may be a very dire one.
Andrea D'AMBRA, point taken. You have to be, you have to move fast so that those banks can reopen and people can get access to their cash.
Yes, I think that this is a real serious thing that citizen, if the citizen didn't want to manifest in the streets, the European Union and the European Central Bank didn't change their plans. So I think this shows how democracy is important, and that the approach of the European institution was bad, because they didn't take in attention what could be the reaction of the people.
And what do you think of the second deal? A ring fence around small savers, but those above 100,000 paying up.
This can be the less bad solution, but I think that this is definitely not the best one, because this could be an example that could be taken for other countries. Could be the next. Who could be the next? Spain, Italy, Greece, etc. So I think this is anyway not the best solution.
In Ireland, the taxpayers footed the bill of the bailout. Here in Cyprus, as you can see, it's private bank customers. I don't know, on the France 24 Debate Facebook page, Michael from Houston writes, I don't know what the solution is, but continuous bailouts versus letting the banks fail due to their own mismanagement is a tough question to answer. Well, let's ask the banker sitting at this table. What do you do?
It's not a banking mismanagement. We know and we knew for years that there was something fishy in this country. And when you have this kind of expansion of the banking system vis-à-vis the normal GDP, you say,
7 times bigger.
Yeah. What is there? Okay, what are they doing, really? Okay, and so my understanding is, and the true anxiety for the people is, what are we supposed to do? And what is the strategy of this country? Is this country, is it possible for a country to be a platform for Russian oligarchs or someone, okay? So it is very important, and people are worried because they say, yes, we made mistakes, we were not aware. Officially, everyone knew this, okay? And within the country, people say, so far so good. Outside, so far so good. It is not possible to manage a country like this. It is not possible to manage the European Union like this. Okay, and now we pay very dearly, all the bad consequences, all the consequences of the fact that basically we did not pay attention to what was going on in this country, within the country, from inside and from outside. So it is, let us say, very, very, annoying. But now we have to do, what are we supposed to do with this country? How is it possible to help him to have a clear strategy, for example, with agriculture, with new facilities, and of course tourism, and to have another future than to have banks and banks and banks going from Russia. So we have to invent something for this country.
Costas, Lapavitsas, is it like Jean-Paul Betbèze described? You have to really start from scratch when it comes to Cyprus now?
Not at all. Cyprus followed the mistaken development path, for sure. No question at all about it. Cyprus gave a lot of emphasis to its banking system, and it became greatly enlarged. All this talk about Russian oligarchs, incidentally, is just talk. There's been very little evidence produced. Yes, there are a lot of Russian deposits, but there are a lot of Russian deposits in Germany, proportionately far more than that. This talk about shady Russian money and Russian oligarchs is talk, I repeat.
But hang on, how can it be that tiny Cyprus is the #1 foreign direct investor in Russia?
There is a lot of Russian money in Cyprus, I never denied that. But the talk of Russian oligarchs and crooked money and so on, undoubtedly there's something there, but it's mostly talk. What Cyprus has is not a problem of Russian criminality or anything like that. What Cyprus has is an overexpanded banking system. That is true. This banking system in Cyprus expanded domestically, so there was an enormous bubble. The households and businesses are over-indebted in Cyprus, and Cyprus lent a lot of money to Greece. So the crisis became a crisis when the public sector involvement deal was applied to Greece, and Greek bonds were slashed, government bonds were slashed, and when the Greek economy went into tremendous depression, and therefore a lot of debts and loans that Cypriot banks had made to Greece became unpayable. So Cypriot banks became effectively bankrupt when Greece went the way it has gone. Now, I repeat, the pattern of development in Cyprus was unsustainable. Now, the way the European community, the Troika, has dealt with the problem is just simply unbelievable. Instead of dealing with it in a spirit of community, in a spirit of solidarity, what they went out and did was to devise rules which applied just to Cyprus. And by doing that, they basically attacked the banking system and violently strung it. What is going to happen in Cyprus is that the banking system will contract possibly by 40%, possibly by more, within a very short period of time. Therefore, there will be an absolute shortage of credit. At the same time, the state will take upon itself 10 billion euros of new debt. In other words, the public debt of Cyprus will become unmanageable. To deal with that, the country will have to adopt austerity. So what we're going to have is austerity plus shrinking credit. The economy of Cyprus is simply destroyed. That's what the deal has done. This isn't a rescue of Cyprus. This is a destruction of Cyprus. That is not the way the European Union and the Monetary Union ought to be dealing with respect to its members.
Thomas Klau?
Well, I agree with much that has been said, but let's not forget that the new elected Cypriot government colluded in the deal of last week, which was even worse, I would argue, than the present one, has fought tooth and nail to preserve the unsustainable offshore finance model, which should never have been allowed to happen. The primary responsibility for that lies with the Cypriot political class, of course, Cypriot banks, but also, I repeat it, we are in democracy, Cypriot electors.
Or does it lie just with the Cypriot class in the sense that in 2004, when they entered the Eurozone, they didn't even have a financial regulation authority?
Well, you see what
Brussels knew all this.
There was a collective failure in Brussels to accept and to realize that membership in a currency union means severe limitations of national sovereignty. Basically, if you enter a currency union, you sign 60% of your national sovereignty away. It's gone. It must be gone. It should be gone, because Cyprus shows how the weakest link, the tiniest speck, the tiniest link in the chain can blow the whole thing to smithereens. Now, for that failure to accept the consequence of monetary union, France and Germany bear as much responsibility as Cyprus and Ireland and Luxembourg and the rest of them put together. It was a collective act of delusion. that said, I repeat, that there is a measure of responsibility that lies with voters who elected politicians who made very bad policy choices and re-elected them. There was in Cyprus, as in other places, a decade of overly facile credit, overly facile money. It was a house of cards which has now come down with a crash. There's no way that Cyprus can be spared pain in the same way that no way that Spain and Portugal and Greece can be spared pain. But what there is now, I think, is a duty for those parts of Europe which are economically much stronger to extend help, to help these countries, force, if you like, move to a healthier, more sustainable path of economic development, but in doing so to help them and to help generously. And that is the bit where Berlin is to be found wanting so far, and that's the bit where more has to come from Berlin.
More is to come from Berlin. Another precinct heard from after the deal, of course, is Moscow, with at least 1/3 of the money in Cyprus's banks belonging to Russians. The Kremlin is not amused.
Looks like the stealing of what has already been stolen continues. So we have to figure out what this whole story will turn into in the end, and what will be the consequences for the international, financial and foreign exchange.
Jean-Paul Betbeze, your thoughts?
Yeah, the first story, concerning our colleague in London, he has to admit, and he admitted, that when you have this kind of banking situation, there is something problematic, okay? This has to be admitted. And second, no one pay attention to this, or no one dare to pay attention to this. It's not merely a question of let us say, political people. It is the idea that within the country, everyone knew it. Okay, the companies, the people, the industries, and they were rather complacent with this. And this was too much. And this is it. It is always a system. When you make too much of something, the crisis is terrible. And this is exactly what happened. And what I said before, when you will have a shrinkage of the banking activity in Cyprus, it's in a sense done. And now, what else? What are we supposed to do? And it is, if we do not have a hope for this country, a new strategy, a new activity, you have a problem. When you say, for example, we have to make credit, everyone is okay to help the country, but to help the country to do what? Okay, it is very important that globally speaking, and it is the same story in Cyprus, in Greece, in Spain, in Italy, and in France, we must have a sort of global strategy to have growth with innovation, with some division of activity that would sustain growth. Otherwise, in all countries, we will have recession. Okay,
right, so
we are in recession 2 years in a row. It is impossible. It is unbearable.
Right, the need for a blueprint going forward. When we come back, we're also going to look at the ripple effects for the rest of Europe. This is the France 24 TV.